also thank Thomas for this clear overview of our subject today. And I will now focus on the legitimate question he's asking when addressing the problem, especially about the proportionality assessment and the way military armed forces implement this obligation. So I will focus especially on targeting a process, targeting issues. But before, we have to keep in mind the fact that wars are more and more waged in urban areas. Why is it so? It's an evidence, but because towns are concentrating powers, a lieu de pouvoir, as we say in French. And it has always been so. And if you want to take power, you need to take the town. And because the world, too, is getting more and more urbanized. And because some enemies want to fight in this very difficult field that provides them shelter, that refrains army from which IHL means something and is concrete obligation, so that refrains them to use the military power they have because of the risk of collateral damage especially. And for these armies, nations, they might lose support of their public opinion. Just take a look at the Vietnam War, the opinion of the US people, and lose legitimacy for their military action. The core obligation of IHL to distinct military objectives and civilian people and property leads so in urban areas to have stringent means and methods of warfare. I would say that the regular military armed forces will like to fight in the desert with no civilian around, and barely, I would say, into brackets, no limits, to use a large spectrum of the military power. But there is no getting away of the facts, and especially in asymmetric wars, especially it has become so a rule and not an exception, unfortunately. So coming back to the way military armed forces practically implement the obligation of proportionality, the core activity is based on targeting process and the lessons learned exercises. Why do we have a targeting process? Targeting process, what is it and why? It's a process for planned strikes. And we will see what are the conditions to have these planned strikes led in a good manner. And why do we do this? Because there is a general limitation of the military action. And we want to comply with the IHL principle, distinction, proportionality, humanity, necessity, I don't come back on this. And to save means, we don't have a lot of means, we don't have a lot of people, of bombs and so on and so forth. And so you need to save them. And planning is the best way to get a desired effect. You will hear this word quite a few times in my presentation, the desired end state. What is the best way to reach it? And we have to prevent, we have to have no collateral damage, but it knows that it can happen, so we have to master this collateral damage. So, talking about the joint targeting process, nations like mine and others, we have some processes, and you see, for instance, the NATO definition, and we have a special document for France, and all these documents are restricted. So I'm sorry not to give the full content of and what I will give you is open source, sorry. And you see, it is something that is prepared, when it is prepared at a strategic level, with a lot of intelligence that is needed to reach this state. For instance, you see, map of Libya, and we will try so to, maybe the desired end state was protecting civilian. We see 4 years after that might be a failure in the desired end state. But at the time being, preventing collateral damage was quite efficient. It was really, really special and a very good targeting process. And so, for instance, you will see, talking about infrastructure, because Thomas raised this point of infrastructure, we have the map of situation of the power plants, and if we have to strike these plants, what will be the effect? If you put the total, it will be 100% of the power supply of Libya, and so maybe we'll need just to strike for 2, 5, 20% of the power, because talking about the power, sometimes power is dual. The problem is if you can cut the power, you can destroy a plant, because there is a main production of munitions and so on and so forth in the area. When you do some process, targeting process, you gather a lot of people that are specialists. You have the operational specialists, you've got the engineer specialists on infrastructure. They will especially give the information about what is a sewage, where are the tanks for the potable, drinkable water, sorry. And all the specialists, the legal advisor, geography, historical, they will define some targets. What can be targeted and what can be not targeted. And some things are quite easy to determine, especially in no strike list, because IHL defines, for instance, I'm sure you know all what does this means, and some specially protected installations. And you know, when looking at the actuality, for instance, here in Palmyra, IS targeted deliberately and destroyed the temples. And here, recently in Kunduz, the hospital of Médecins Sans Frontières was targeted with more than 20 people that died. So you have a no-strike list because some installations are specially protected, and church and synagogues and mosques, and you have some restricted list because to reach the desired end state, you will say that we must not attack this, because people will be very, very upset because it is not what we are looking for, so you have a restricted list. To give you an example, when you do some targeting, you not specially, most of the time you use kinetic means, but you can use other means. You can use cyber, you can use special forces for some local actions, and you see here that you have a lot of possibilities to choose. For instance, on this power plant, what do you want to do? If you've got good intelligence, you know that if you strike the power plant, you will destroy turbine and generator, and you will need 6 months to have the electricity back. But if you're just targeting the pylons here, in less than 15 days, that would be okay. So if you have this good intelligence, you will be able to focus, and so not to create disproportionate and respect the IHL. So, for instance, this is in Libya, sorry. With target file, you've got, it was in Garian. Garian, it's a city located south of Tripoli. What the targeting people will do is to get information, get about what kind of installation we have in the area, define a radius, 500 meters, where we can have some blast and fragmentation, and so define the good weapons to use. And so here you can find that we will have an impact here, here, and here, in the center, to protect what is around, and especially, it's another area, and for instance, you have a school here, you know, and there is military, it's a military installation. It should not be there, but it is there. So if it is needed to destroy it, if the assessment is that there could be no collateral damage, or very few collateral damage, you will choose the right weapon to do it. And for instance, here, you've got precise guided munitions, and you will take the right time and the right angle, you know. For sure, it's better to come on this way than on this way. and time for sure when people are not, students are not at school. On the conduct of hostilities, there are a few words that are quite important to know. That so, in fact, I don't know if somebody in this room knows the ISO norms 9000. And on these norms, you say that you need to plan, to do, to check, and to act. It's a little bit the same. It's just a process. Plan, do, check, act. So we have seen the planning, and then we will see what we have to do during the conduct of hostilities. And that to check, it is the battle damage assessment, and to act is to correct what you are doing. Plan, do, check, and act. So, in the plan, and then in the conduct of hostilities, this is typically what is needed. You need first a PID, positive identification. So you know that this area, it's a military objective because of, by nature, you will see the flag of your enemy. Maybe too, it can be by the conduct, hostile conduct. We always have positive identification, and we need some visual identification. Maybe not in desert, when you know that there is nobody else than your enemy. But especially in urban areas, it is quite useful to check that there is no civilian around. And that's why you need to have some visual identification. And there's something that is quite good now, it's that are the drones, because you needed some people on the ground, you need to have some satellites, and with the drones, you've got something that it's much more convenient and less that is cost effective, because not a lot of nations can have satellites, but a lot of people can have drones. And when you have the drones, you check the situation, and so, for instance, when you are targeting some strikes, you need to have a clearance, maybe for 2 hours, clearance for 2 hours. It means that there is no civilian in the area. And because it is a cycle, an interactive process, if a civilian is entering the area, you will stop the operation and wait, come back to the time 0 and start 2 hours maybe waiting time to launch an operation, launch a strike. Thomas says that you need to have, you can choose the right weapons, especially with a fuse. And for instance, on this kind of buildings, you will choose, if you don't want to make too much fragmentation and too much blast outside, some fuse that will penetrate. It takes 20 milliseconds, for instance, or 40 milliseconds, penetrate inside and then explode. So it can explode before, on impact, or after impact.